So what is the one factor that we're all neglecting? We talk so much when we're building muscle around nutrition. We spend so much time talking about the different reps and series of training programs that we should follow. We talk around taking this nutrition, that nutrition, whey protein, but we never really discuss the impact of sleep and what it has on our actual muscle recovery and overall well-being. So in today's video, we're going to take a look at an article on the National Library of Medicine on PubMed that talks around the effects of changing in sleeping behaviour on skeletal muscle and fat mass, a retrospective cohort study. Now, I've tried to look for a few studies recently that have discussed some of the impact of muscle growth on and sleep and the relationship, and I came across this one, which was the effect of sleep deprivation on acute skeletal muscle recovery after exercise. But what you often find with these articles is the studies, in this case, for example, we've done a randomized model of 10 men. Well, that's not really a decent sample size that you can get any substantive data from. But if you take a look at the second one, it's a total study of nearly 20,000 participants, and that's enough sample data that we can get some meaningful feedback that we can actually use. So here's what it says. Based on the sleep survey and study behavior, the poor quality of sleep was evaluated when the subjects did not feel satisfied after sleep, while the good quality was evaluated as they felt refreshed. Now, what he's talking about here is, and this is really interesting, particularly for me if you've not seen the video on the Whoop, it talks around you can have a certain volume of sleep, for example 8 hours, which is what's often recommended, but sometimes if the quality of your sleep isn't good enough, it doesn't matter that you've got the hours, it just matters that your sleep quality wasn't good enough. You may have woken up, you may have had disturbed sleep, and so your body doesn't actually recover. And when we talk around sleep, there's various different states of sleep, so REM sleep, light sleep, deep sleep, and some of those sleep cycles that we go through during the night are essential for our recovery. And if we don't actually go through the full cycles, we don't get the right amount of quality sleep, then it has a real big impact. So it says of the 20,000 studies that were divided across 4 groups, according to the changes in sleep quality, they judged them from good to good, and they judged them from good to poor and poor to poor. And so what it says is, as changes in skeletal muscle and fat mass were estimated, and it gives you the model for how they're calculating changes in skeletal muscle mass. So here's a really interesting thing around this. The results are as follows. It says when sleep duration decreased and the quality of sleep deteriorated, fat mass index increased significantly. What it's saying is when we sleep less and the quality of our sleep is less, you can actually see there is a material difference in fat mass index. And part of the reason it doesn't talk necessarily about this within the abstract that we talk around that is you increase and you change your body's hormones when you sleep and you have different quality of sleep. So cortisol, for example, can rise when you have poor quality sleep, which is a stress related hormone, which might put your body in fight or flight mode, and it might be then using the cortisol to trigger internal physiological mechanisms that store more body fat. Interesting here, it says, on the other hand, as the quality of sleep deteriorated, skeletal muscle mass decreased despite the maintained sleep duration. So what it's saying is when 2 people have the same sleep duration under similar conditions based on this sample data, but the quality isn't as good, the decrease in skeletal muscle mass or the deterioration is even higher. And so this is what I was talking about before in terms of how important it is that the quality of your sleep is really good. And if you look at some of a really interesting one is Brian Johnson, who you've seen his blueprint protocol. He has managed on the Whoop to score for the past year 100% sleep performance due to a temperature controlled mattress, complete blackness in his room, and going to bed at the same time consistently, time in, time out. And that's where you can see that although he is in incredible shape and eats the right foods, his body's primed for peak performance because of the quality of his sleep, not just the duration. Now, the interesting thing about Brian Johnson that he says is he wakes up naturally when his body feels like it needs to wake up. Now, I appreciate that's not a luxury that we all have, but it just goes to show some of the importance of actually being able to get the right quality of sleep to make sure that you are primed for peak performance. Now, if you're watching this to the end, I'd love to know how many hours sleep are you getting? Do you have kids? Do you run a business? Let me know in the comments as usual below, and we'll see how much sleep people are having and the impact that that's having on their performance.